All right. Well, I've heard a few more beeps, so I'm guessing we have about as many on the call as we're going to have today. We'll go ahead and get started in the spirit of time. Thank you for joining us today for our call. We're in session 9 now, which is the clinical plan as it relates to DSME business plan. This is Meredith with Intelligence, and I come to the work because we are contracted with the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, and one of our assigned tasks is for diabetes care. Part of that contract is helping increase utilization of diabetes self-management around the state of Colorado. And Inka is also on.
Hi everyone, this is Inka Deku. I'm here at the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, and I oversee the Diabetes Self-Management Education program work under our CDC grant to promote and increase utilization of DSME programs and folks with diabetes and getting managed diabetes care.
We are going to have a minute to hear who else has joined us on the call, but before we get to that, I just want to set the foundation for what these calls are all about. We're focusing right now on the DSME business plan, and if you look at this slide, that's really the umbrella of your DSME program. And then your AADE or ADA DSME application and structure gets a little bit more microscopic, and then your clinical quality improvement plan that falls within your program dives down even deeper. So we're actually just getting ready to wrap up the business plan guide. We've been at this for months now, and we're about through all of the content. So that's what we're up to on these calls. If you're just joining us and haven't been on the call before, know that this business plan guide is available electronically, and this is what we will be referring to throughout the call.
So just for some housekeeping, please keep your phones on mute by selecting *6 to mute and unmute yourself. Don't place us on hold because some folks have hold music on their end. When speaking, please state your name. We really encourage in-depth sharing, so please step up and step back. If you feel more comfortable using the chat option on the right-hand side, feel free to type in questions or comments, and we can address those throughout the call. And we do record this WebEx event, and I will send out call notes a few weeks after the call, consolidating the morning call as well as the noon call, so you can see information from both calls. I have not sent out the February call notes yet. I will do that in the upcoming days. The recording for the WebEx was broken, and so we just got that link, and so I will be sending out the call notes for the February call shortly.
All right, so this is where we like to see who we have joining us. You'll see on the slide there's a map of Colorado, and those dots indicate where we know there are existing ADA and AD programs. If you wouldn't mind clicking on the pen icon in the upper left-hand corner of your screen. Once you left-click on that, you'll see an arrow. If you left-click on that arrow, place your arrow wherever you're located in the state, and we'll see your name pop up. Do we have anyone on the phone that is not joining us by WebEx today?
Hi, this is Alicia. I'm with Boulder Community Health. I'm actually trying to get on there, but I don't have a registration ID.
And I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name.
My name is Alicia. I'm a diabetes educator with Boulder Community Health.
Oh, perfect. Hi, Alicia.
Oh. Hi there.
Do you have an email from messenger that has a link to the event. Do you remember seeing that come through?
I do have the one from Beth. That's the one to get on the call, but I still don't see the registration ID in there.
You got the, at least you got an email from me with the, and then where you click select the 8:30 or noon call, and then you register through WebEx. Did you do that step?
Yeah, so I'm on that screen, and then I just get another registration ID.
Did you get a calendar invite appointment?
No.
Okay. Okay, so you did register. So you need to register first, and then you should get an email from them with your own registration code.
Okay. All right. I think I see what you're saying now. I'll work on that while you guys are talking.
Okay, thank you.
Good to have you. Thank you for joining. And Sarah, I see you popped up on our map, and we have Roseanne on the line as well. Who else is on the line that we have?
I'm still having trouble figuring out how to use the arrow.
We're going to get this figured out, Roseanne.
I know. I just get every time I can't figure it out.
Okay, so you left-clicked
on
the pen.
Uh-huh.
And then there's an arrow right under that.
Uh-huh.
A right arrow.
Uh-huh.
If you left click on that and then move your mouse to Denver or in that area and left click again, it should drop that arrow onto the map.
It's not doing it, so I don't know what I'm doing wrong.
Huh. Anyone else?
There it is.
There you are. All right.
Sorry.
No worries. Anyone else on the phone or anyone that hasn't introduced themselves? All right. With that, let's move into the call objectives.
So what we've been doing the last several months is identifying one of the standards in the new 2017 National Standards for DSMES. And so we'll cover one of those. And then within the clinical plan, in the business plan guide, it lists evidence-based decision support tools to support your clinical plan. And so we'll go over those. And then we'll have a facilitated conversation on the summary page of the Standards of Medical Care in Diabetes 2018. We had asked people to review those and just kind of think through some of the changes and share that with the group.
All right, so this is where we'd like to hear from you. Our polling question, you'll see the poll open up. If you could make your selection and then hit submit once that poll comes up. The question today is, in your DSME program, what do you most often use for guidance on the most recent evidence-based diabetes care standards? The first one, Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, Nutrition Practice Guidelines, ADA Standards of Medical Care in Diabetes, American Heart Association, American College of Cardiology Task Force on Practice Guidelines, the Obesity Society's Guidelines for Overweight and Obesity Management, evidence-based DSME curriculum that you're using in your program, or other. So the poll will open up. If you could please make your selection and submit. All right, we'll give it just a few seconds to correlate the results. And it looks like we have a few that are using the ADA Standards of Medical Care. one response for the curriculum you use in your program, and of course Inka and I didn't respond. So thank you for submitting that.
So, as I mentioned, we've been referring to the DSMES 2017 standards. Here is that link in case you don't have it. One thing I wanted to ask the group is there anything else we can do with the standards moving forward? Do you need more in-depth sharing, some technical assistance? You know, I do know that ADA and AADE do provide have some great resources and technical assistance, since all programs are going to have to comply by May 1st. But, you know, just ponder on this question if you want to, if something comes to mind right now, feel free to speak up, but if something comes to your mind later, please reach out to Meredith and I if you need more, if you'd like more information on how to implement the new standards in your program. Next slide. So we felt that Standard 6 aligns really nicely with the clinical plan, since one of the requirements being an accredited or recognized program, you have to have an evidence-based curriculum reflecting current evidence and practice guidelines. And we'll go over some of the suggested evidence-based decision support tools that can support your curriculum. I know that a lot of programs use the standard curriculum offered by ADA and AADE, but programs do have the opportunity to create their own curriculum and submit to their respective organizations for approval. So you don't have to use their curriculum if you decide that you want to use your own. And then what resources are available to help you write your own curriculum are some of these tools we'll talk about in the next slide. So we'll just spend a few minutes going over these suggested tools that are listed in the clinical plan section in the DSME business guide. And I just wanted some feedback as to why you selected the polling question a few slides back. No one selected the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics practice guidelines, but if you're familiar with them and are using them, we'd love to hear your input, what you think of it. We've had some folks in the 8:30 call talk about it. Is there anyone on the call familiar with these guidelines?
This is Roseanne. I'm familiar with the guidelines, but because we haven't until recently been able to bill MNT, I haven't really used them. I've been using the ADA standards for our diabetes education as opposed to the MNT. I would refer more to the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics.
Okay, that's a good point. Thank you, Roseanne. Anyone else familiar with these guidelines that would like to share? Well, it's an internet-based diet manual and professional practice manual, which gives you access to evidence and knowledge-based nutrition information. And so if you're looking for really specifically nutrition information, this is a good resource. It is, geared to registered dietitians, but it is available for all professionals. The next one, the ADA Standards of Medical Care and Diabetes. We had a couple folks select that one. You want to tell us why you selected that toolkit? And we'll go into more in-depth sharing on the next slide, but just a quick thought as to why you selected it on the poll. Make sure you take yourself off mute if someone just speak up. We did not hear anything. So we'll cover that a little bit more in the next slide. So if you want to share then, please do. So the next one is the American Heart Association and the American College of Cardiology Task Force. This is more focused on cardiovascular, but, you know, there is a strong link between folks with diabetes and cardiovascular disease. We had one person on the phone call this morning that indicated that her clinical practice uses these guidelines to improve cardiovascular health. So its application is for patients with or at risk of developing cardiovascular disease. The next one, you all, if you have an accredited or recognized program, have an evidence-based DSMES curriculum. Does anyone not use the ADA or AADE and use their own?
This is Roseanne. We don't use our own, but we use the Park Nicollet International Diabetes Center curriculum.
Okay.
We use that in combination with the AADE one, kind of a little bit of a blend.
Right. Anyone else?
This is Sarah. We use AADE, but we also use Indian Health Services as a more culturally competent curriculum, and we'll kind of substitute like handouts and different components for the mind, body, spirit lesson from that curriculum as well.
Great, that's really good to know. Thanks, Sarah. And the last suggested support tool is the Obesity Society Guidelines to Overweight and Obesity. I was looking at this the other day, and one thing I really liked about this, the guidelines, is that they had a really nice figure treatment algorithm, and kind of like a step-by-step, you know, the patient at what BMI they are, and kind of what lifestyle interventions, any comorbidities, and so these guidelines are kind of sub-guidelines to the American Heart Association and the American College of Cardiology Task Force. It looks like it was like a sub-task force of the bigger guidelines we talked about with cardiology. And so those are a little bit more outdated. I think the last one was updated in 2012 or 2013. But still, if you have overweight or obese patients, maybe there's some resources in these guidelines to help with your work. So moving on to a more in-depth discussion on the standards of medical care in diabetes. They update the guidelines every year, but instead of having to read a 175-page document to find out what changes they made, there is this really nice 3-page summary of those changes. Did anyone have a chance to quickly scan that 3-page document? And if so, would you like to share kind of what stuck out to you of some changes that piqued your interest?
This is Roseanne. I was looking through it and felt like we were meeting all the standards, except I wasn't sure if we were meeting Standard 3 on the evaluation of the population served. I just wondered if anybody had any ideas as to how to do that.
Anyone can offer a suggestion? I'm reading it through real quickly.
So this is Alicia Boulder, Community Health. So I also was kind of struggling with that when I glanced at it. We have someone assigned for population health within our department, and so what, I don't know how helpful this is, but I had given her a copy of what was previously submitted for the standard and just asked her, because we're doing population health for all kinds of different metrics, to scan over that to identify what, if anything needs to be updated. But I personally haven't really touched much on it because I don't really have that background to know.
Thank you, Elise. That's good information to know. And I can look, Meredith and I can look through that more closely, Roseanne.
Okay. Well, the idea of asking if a hospital, I mean, maybe there is somebody in a hospital that has done this and we just could access that information. So I like that idea.
So as a clinician and an educator, how easy or hard is it to stay updated with the evolving clinical diabetes care standards?
This is Roseanne. I feel like I'm doing all the talking, but I don't think it's that hard to look at the document and read it, and then there's been a few things that have come out that give you, like ideas of what has changed. I think the harder part is, like, for example, we were just in the process of developing a marketing flyer, and we're able to make the change to DSMES instead of DSMT. And so that's the kind of thing. It's like once you get those things in place, then sometimes it takes some time and blood, sweat, and tears in order to make changes. So that's one challenge.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel like a clinician? Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I've kind of am new into my role, and there is no one else dedicated to diabetes education. And so I definitely feel that heaviness around trying to get updated on from whatever was previous and what's new. We don't have a registered, I'm a nurse, and we don't have a registered dietitian. We don't have an endocrinologist. So it's tricky to get up to date on these things without kind of a go-to person within our organization.
Thank you for sharing. That kind of was another question I had. Do you feel that clinicians you interface with are keeping up with these care standards? That it's not just program staff running a DSMES program, because there's diabetes-related things going on within a health system outside of DSMES. How are they staying up with all of the new standards?
This is Roseanne. Another one that I think is a little bit of a challenge is that ongoing follow-up, the ongoing support. Just because
From who? From the physician?
The patients that we see,
Okay.
because a lot of times we can't get them to come back, and so they might come for an initial, class or two, and then they don't come back, and so it's hard to see how they're doing and how we can support them.
This is Alicia, and I kind of feel like sometimes I wonder how much our physicians, the primary care, sometimes I feel like they are limited as well in their expertise on diabetes. And so I don't know how much they're keeping up. Maybe they go to conferences, but they come to me as a very new diabetes educator asking for what they should do, which tells me, they also are, I guess, not up to date on some of these standards.
Alicia, I feel like you're reading my mind, because that goes into another question I have, is any ideas on what might be helpful to them, and how could this information be best to share with physicians, clinics, hospital staff?
This is Roseanne. There was a great document that was jointly put together by ADA and AADE and possibly another organization as well. It's a 2-page document that talks about when physicians should refer for diabetes education. And that's something that as we do our marketing, we wanted to share with them, because I think a lot of them don't think about diabetes education until the patient's already in trouble, instead of thinking about it right when they're first diagnosed. And so that's one of the things that we're trying to do, is to get them to refer people when they're first diagnosed, instead of waiting until, okay, now we need to start insulin, or, things are, kind of, they're further down the line and more difficult to make changes.
I know exactly which position paper you're talking about. It was The third organization was the Academy of Nutrition. So what ideas come to mind, Roseanne, or anyone else on the call, of getting that information to physicians? What would be interesting to them? An in-person meeting, lunch and learn, a webinar, a flyer. What are some ways that providers get information in general?
Well, our plan is to, when we have downtime, like patients that don't show, to try to get out and actually stop by the office and provide them with a packet that includes our order form, this new handout that we just developed for them to check off which program they want their patient to participate in, and then kind of an introductory letter with that document we were just discussing on the back. So we wanted to have this little packet that we could put together and get to everybody, and so that's our goal, is to try to get to as many just kind of in person as we can, and then obviously there might be some that are a distance away that we might have to mail it to them, or some other method. But I think our goal was, I think we were afraid that if we just mailed it, that it would just ended up in the stack of things that were never looked at.
Thanks for sharing. Anyone else have a suggested mode of reaching out to providers to get them the latest information on diabetes, the diabetes self-management program? Well, we're here at the health department. We have been spending a lot of time thinking about provider education and outreach, and have a work group around that to start to really think through how do you get providers' attention when it comes to a public health agenda topic. And so as we kind of start to narrow those strategies down, I'm excited to be able to share some of the diabetes work that we're going to be doing to promote from the health department. So stay tuned. Nothing immediate, maybe 6 months to a year, I always say. But
I just thought one thought we could maybe tie into is that a lot of physicians are being held accountable for outcome measures on their patients. And I think if there's a way that we could kind of get the word out that, working with diabetes educators is one way to improve those outcome measures, that maybe the docs would be more motivated to utilize the programs.
Yep, exactly, Roseanne. You read my mind as well. Yep.
Roseanne, with that point, there's a document that Telegen created out on our website. If you Google Telegen QPP diabetes alignment, that should get you to a flyer, and that's almost exactly what you're talking about. It talks about the diabetes measures that they could be reporting and accountable to, and some of the quality improvement activities that they can choose to do that they can attest to get them credit towards incentive payments from Medicare. So take a look at that, and I'd be glad to hear feedback on that. You can certainly share it with your providers, but that's out there as a resource.
So just to clarify, it's Telegen QPP diabetes alignment.
Yep.
Okay.
And if you don't find it, let me know. I'd be glad to send it to you.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. All right. So great discussion and sharing. And as Inka alluded to, we'll be sending out the recordings and information from the morning call and this call to refer to. And your feedback and discussion always help give us ideas on what we can be providing on our end to help with the challenges that you're having. So our next calls will be on April 18th at both 8:30 and noon. And we will actually be wrapping up the business plan guide in the April sessions. And that's perfect timing because the CDPHE conference is happening April 20th. So Inga, I'll let you say a word about that.
Yeah, so I just wanted to remind you all that the registration links are available for the April 20th conference. It's an all-day event. The agenda is posted as well, and we are offering 7 CEs for registered dietitians, nurses, certified diabetes educators, pharmacists, and so that's really exciting for us that we're able to offer some continuing education credits. And go ahead and be sure to register. I think all 3 of you have already registered. I think I saw your names. Already about 25 registered. And so, and then during that conference, the reason why we're not talking about continuous quality improvement is because Marianne Hododowicz has an hour and 15 minutes to talk about quality improvement during the conference, and so that's why Meredith and I are not going to cover it at our next call, and like she mentioned, we're just going to wrap up the business plan guide.
That all being said, we'll be listening from the conference and obtaining feedback to determine what our next agenda is for these calls to try to make them most relevant and useful for you all. So we're not committing to the future agenda just quite yet because we want to integrate your feedback and Marianne's resources into that. So that brings us to the end. We always keep these data sources here as reference, just as a reminder they're out there. And thank you for spending your time with us. You can always reach out to Inka or myself via phone or email indicated on this slide. And you should see an evaluation over on the right-hand side of your WebEx screen if you wouldn't mind just taking a minute to provide feedback, anything we can do better, anything that's working well, and we'll do our best to integrate that into our future work together. With that being said, thank you very much. Have a great week, and we hope to see and talk to you all soon.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Bye.